CTV News at 5 with Hudson Mack.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. We begin with a developing story tonight. A Canadian border guard has been shot and wounded on duty. The woman was shot in the neck at the Peace Arch crossing south of Vancouver this afternoon. The Border Services agent shot by a man who then turned the gun on himself and took his own life. Witnesses say the man was in a white van at the border kiosk when he opened fire on the female guard. They report hearing 3 gunshots, and then there was chaos. The border was shut down immediately. Swarms of RCMP officers were on the scene, questioning witnesses and gathering evidence. The wounded border guard was breathing when she was airlifted to Royal Columbian Hospital in New Westminster.
We haven't confirmed the identity or the origin of the suspect yet. He was entering Canada in a vehicle that bear a Washington plate. We're still talking to witnesses to confirm exactly what events took place and the sequence of events that led to the unfolding of the incident here today.
RCMP say it is too soon at this point to say if the shooter and the border agent might have known each other. Surveillance tape from the crossing is being reviewed. Witnesses at the scene are still in shock.
When I pulled up, oh gosh, there's about 12 border guards with their guns drawn on that white van.
On the white van?
On the white van. The white van in the corner. And they had it surrounded.
Just the van doors were open and all the guns were already drawn, and we were just pulling up, and so we didn't actually get to see what happened, but you saw the ambulances and cop cars that pulled up and sort of descended on the place, so you can...
That line, third line, yeah, behind the red car, then all of a sudden I hear 2 shots. I stayed there. I don't know, but something happened there.
Folks on the Lower Mainland who are traveling to the U.S. should be advised the border will remain closed for some time. Travelers should use alternate crossings. Public Safety Minister Vic Taves says the shooting is a sobering reminder of the dangerous conditions that Canadian law enforcement agencies face every day as they work to protect the safety and security of Canadians. Premier Christy Clark addressed the Vancouver Island Economic Summit in Nanaimo this morning, telling the crowd that she's going to turn BC into Canada's top economic engine, and she says we don't need Alberta oil to grease BC's economic wheels. Clark pointed out that the province has a thriving technology sector that's expected to grow even more over the next decade, and she says we have seen strong gains in forest products exports and a 25% increase in trade with lumber-hungry China. She says her government's gains in tough economic times give her confidence the Vancouver Islanders will support the Liberals when it comes time to head to the polls next May.
I think people are feeling like it's tough enough to get ahead. I don't think anybody's going to want to slip backward, whether or not they're in Fort St. John, Burnaby, or Vancouver Island. We have a plan. We are executing on that plan, and the plan has shown great results. We're #1 in job creation in Canada right now. That puts a lot of food on the table for a lot of families.
The Premier has been criticized for turning a blind eye to Vancouver Island with funding announcements. She says job numbers reinforce her position that her government's job creation program is working, and BC is already ahead of Alberta when it comes to jobs growth. She also supports her government's support for the island. A number of Hollywood notables are throwing their support behind the protesters who will converge on the legislature this Monday, demonstrating against pipelines and tankers along the West Coast. Greenpeace says some big-name stars, including Daryl Hannah, seen here getting arrested in Washington, as well as Pamela Anderson, Michael Moore, and others, have endorsed the sit-in. 3,500 people have now signed up to take part on Monday. No word tonight on whether any of these celebrities actually will be attending the event on Monday, but we'll be there. There is hope for hockey fans tonight. After 34 days without a new offer on the table, the NHL today delivered a proposal to the Players Union. It calls for a full 82-game regular season to get underway on November 2nd, and it includes a 50-50 split of revenues between the players and owners. Sounds good on paper, but will it be a game changer? Our Jordan Cunningham joins us now live with more on that. Jordan.
Hudson, it took a month and a day and $250 million in lost revenue, but meaningful dialogue has finally begun between the owners and players after a surprise proposal this morning.
We offered a 50-50 share of HRR, hockey-related revenues, and we believe we addressed the concern that players have about what happens to their salaries.
What our hope is that after we review this, that there will be a feeling on the player side that this is a proposal from which we can negotiate and try and reach a conclusion.
The offer also calls for a 1-week abbreviated training camp for teams. Now, if you think cramming an 82-game schedule into the shortened season is a bit much, it actually only amounts to 1 extra game every 5 weeks. And by Don Fair's comments, the players will by no means jump at this offer right away. And we'll hear what members of the Canucks have to say about this grand announcement a little later in sports.
All right. See you then.
All right.
Thank you, Jordan. There are amphibians invading the South Island. The capital region is jumping right now with an explosion of American bullfrogs. Teams say they have scooped up nearly 3,000 big hoppers out of lakes and ponds so far this year. That's only about half the number of bullfrogs that were trapped last year. But researchers say that does not mean they're disappearing. In fact, it means they could be spreading or simply eluding capture. Bullfrogs eat almost anything they can fit into their huge mouths, including smaller frogs, birds, and fish. The Vancouver Aquarium has released 5 seal pups back to the wild, with researchers tracking their every move. The Marine Mammal Rescue Center has tagged the rehabilitated animals with satellite-linked transmitters. The seal pups were released on the Sunshine Coast. The Rescue Center hopes the pilot project will give researchers better information about the animals' foraging behavior and habitat use. Well, students in the capital region are joining a global movement as they try to bring an end to hunger around the world. 350 students from St. Andrews and St. Joseph's schools left their classrooms this morning, setting out on a road trip to bring donations to the St. Vincent de Paul Society in support of World Food Day. For the next 2 weeks, students will hold a food drive in the hope that acting locally will help them become part of the solution globally.
There's a lot more people who need food than I thought there would be. It's a really beautiful place here, but there's a lot of homeless people who need help.
It started out as actually wasn't a food drive. I mean, it started out about teaching the kids about what it meant to contribute food to a food bank. We found that there was lots of times when we asked the kids to do things and they bring things in, but they weren't necessarily always understanding what it meant to make that kind of difference. So it was about educating them. The food became secondary. They just, once they started to be educated, they wanted to bring food in to assist, and it's grown into this.
The students are encouraging the Greater Victoria community to pitch in. Food can be dropped off at the St. Vincent de Paul location on View Street. More labor trouble in the province tonight. Members of the Professional Employees Association have walked off their jobs. PEA members staged protests across BC today, including this one at the legislature. They say the province is cutting back on the number of licensed professionals in the public service. And they say you should be worried about that because they're the folks who look out for your safety.
These are engineers and foresters and agrologists and psychologists, and their primary concern in this round of bargaining is that government has been shedding professionals at an alarming rate. So that's 26% fewer professionals over the course of the last decade, 10% fewer over the course of the last 2 years, and really ultimately for our members who care deeply about public service and the public interest, they're very concerned that that simply can't be appropriately managed.
The union is currently in talks with the province but says there's been little movement. It's the first time the PEA has taken job action in 38 years. A Victoria hotel has stepped up to make sure a lunchtime fundraiser that's become a staple in the community will continue serving Super Bowls of Hope. The Empress is out. The Laurel Point Inn is in as this year's Super Bowl of Hope host in support of the Victoria Youth Empowerment Society. Organizers say the fundraiser will take more of a community approach this year with a new location, new chefs, local sponsors, but some of the same folks you know serving up the soup. The event will be held October 30th. You can get tickets at superbowls.com. A proposed marina development in the Harbour City is sparking debate at Nanaimo City Hall. The CEO of the Nanaimo Port Authority went over the $9.3 million plan with councillors last night. The agreement would see the Port Authority acting as the landlord of the area, and a private partner would be in charge of day-to-day marina operations. The federal agency in charge of Nanaimo's commercial boat basin says the 30-year lease will not hurt locals' access to slips, but not everybody buys that.
It's the matter of what will exist for us over the 30-year period of time. The developer himself told us when he told us he wouldn't incorporate us into the 30-year lease, he said, because I could change my mind. And that's our entire point. We have no security on Protection Island as long as we have nothing more than Mr. Dumas' say-so that he will consider it.
The proposed leaseholder, Pacific Northwest Marina Group, says it has consulted with the public and increased the number of one-year leases for boat slips by 40% from the original development plan. Nanaimo's SPCA is back in business after being forced to shut down because of an outbreak of ringworm. The animal shelter shut its doors in August but reopened at noon today after treating dozens of dogs and cats infected with the ringworm outbreak. All the animals at the shelter are now ready for a new place to call home. Staff say it's been a long road to recovery, but all of the animals survived.
The results have now come back, and although it's been difficult for everybody, without having to euthanize animals, everybody's recovered and are now looking for their home. So while it's been tough, it's been a really great result for the animals. If there's ever an animal that needed a home, it's going to be the 60 or so cats and dogs that we've got that have gone through this trauma for the last 6 weeks.
This is the first time the Nanaimo SPCA has completely shut down operations because of ringworm. The SPCA says even though its doors are open, it still is not taking in any new animals until some of the recovering ones find new homes.